go to 1 Kings 18. Let me give you guys some background first. So what's happening this time is that, so Ahab is the king of Israel, right? The kingdom is split, 10 tribes in the north, 2 in the south, and Ahab is the king in the north, all right? And he's described as the most wicked king that Israel has ever had, anyone before him, right? He married Jezebel, who provoked or who led all of Israel to worship Baal, or Baal, or how you guys want to say it. But yeah, King Ahab provoked the Lord to anger more than any other king before him. And so what does he do? In chapter 17, verse 1, Elijah proclaims a drought. So I'm just going to read verse 1. It says, Elijah the Tishbite of the inhabitants of Gilead said to Ahab, As the Lord God of Israel is, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years except at my word. So the Lord sends this drought in a way to, the Lord loves his children, right? So he chastises his children out of love. But what does Ahab do here? He blames Elijah. We see later in chapter 18. Just really sad because in between that time is 3.5 years have passed of drought and famine. So in between those 3.5 years, Elijah runs away and hides, right? Remember the widow he hides out? He hides out with the widow, and you know that story with the widow. And in between this time, Jezebel, she massacres like the prophets of God. And Ahab, he goes all around the nations, or he sends messengers to search and hunt for Elijah. All right, so the prophets of God were dying. They're being massacred by Jezebel, and Ahab is hunting for Elijah. All right, so 3.5 years pass, and so in chapter 18, we see this character named Obadiah who actually protects, who hides 100 prophets of God in 2 caves, 50 each, right? And he feeds them with water and bread. I actually want to read that real quick. In verse 13 of chapter 18, this is Obadiah speaking to Elijah. Okay? So Obadiah says, Was it not reported to my Lord what I did when Jezebel killed the prophets of the Lord? How I hid 100 men of the Lord's prophets, 52 cave, and fed them with bread and water? So that's important to remember here because it's going to be brought up again in chapter 19. All right? So I want to pick up in verse 17. So this is when Ahab and Elijah meet for the very first time after 3.5 years of drought and famine. Okay? Alright, so then it happened when Ahab saw Elijah that Ahab said to him, Is that you, O troubler of Israel? So it's crazy because look how Ahab's heart, it's so hardened that he blames Elijah, he blames the prophets of God for this drought. He doesn't see that it's his own sin that, that God brought this drought. So Elijah says, he answers him, I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have, in that you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord and have followed the Baals. Now therefore, send and gather all Israel to me on Mount Carmel, the 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. So now we get to verse 20, the account of Mount Carmel. And so Ahab sent for all the children of Israel and gathered the prophets together on Mount Carmel. And Elijah came to all the people and said, How long will you falter between 2 opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, follow him. But the people answered him not a word. And so, like, this question is presented to us today. That the call of God doesn't change. He calls us to follow him. Jesus said that whoever desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. But, I got this from Liel's dad, like, a lot of Christians, oh, there you are. But there's so many Christians, but there aren't that many disciples of Jesus. Because what? Because they haven't applied that first part, deny self. Instead, they're following themselves, they're following the way of this world, they're following, whatever this world has to offer, And same for us, even us right now, like, I'm pretty sure we're all following after God's will, hopefully, and And still, the world has so many distractions. What, social media? It's all about self, boyfriend and girlfriend. This verse actually had convicted me because, man, I have an idol in my life, and that's like online gaming. It's kind of sad, but yeah, that's my idol. That's my Baal that I was following after, instead of following after God. So yeah, maybe the Lord's telling you today, like, search your heart. Maybe there's an idol that in your life, that your little pet sin that you have, So Elijah says, how long will you falter between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, follow him. Alright? So verse 22. And Elijah said to the people, I alone am left, a prophet of the Lord. So that's not true, right? He's just protecting, the other prophets, right? But Baal's prophets are 450 men. Therefore let them give us 2 bulls, and let them choose 1 bull for themselves, cut it in pieces and lay it on the wood, but put no fire under it. And I will prepare the other bull and lay it on the wood, but put no fire under it. Then you call in the name of your gods, and I will call in the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he is God. And so all the people answered and said, it is well spoken. So, yeah, challenge accepted, right? 25. Now Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose 1 bull for yourselves and prepare it first. For you are many, and call on the name of your God, but put no fire under it. So they took the bull which was given them, prepared it, and called on the name of Baal, from morning even till noon, saying, O Baal, hear us. But there was no voice, no one answered. Then they leaped about the altar which they had made. So, no one answered, so they're just dancing around, right? Kind of silly. And so it was at noon that Elijah mocked them and said, cry aloud, for he is a God. Either he is meditating, or he is busy, or he is on a journey, or perhaps he is sleeping and must be awakened. So they cried aloud and cut themselves, as was their custom, with knives and lances, until the blood gushed out of them. And when midday was past, they prophesied until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice. But there was no voice, no one answered, and no one paid attention. And so that's the reality. That's the truth about idols. We give our all to these idols, our time, our affection, our devotion, our worship to these idols, and we're left with nothing. And they're powerless, they're meaningless, they're empty. That's pretty much it. I'm pretty sure we all have experienced that in our lives, giving all that time to these idols, and then what? You leave feeling empty. All right. So verse 30. Then Elijah said to all the people, come near to me. So all the people came near to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord that was broken down. So notice this, that there was an altar at some point. There was an altar of the Lord on this mountain. So what we know it to be that, when Joshua and Israel crossed the Jordan River, and the Lord separated Jordan River. After they crossed, they built an altar there, so that the generations following would ask, oh, what did God do here? Or what happened here? Then the fathers would tell their children, oh, this is what the Lord did. So at one point, God did something on this mountain, but it was broken down. And Elijah is doing something here. So he's getting them to think and to remember, this Yahweh is the God of Israel. And Elijah took 12 stones according to the number of tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, Israel shall be your name. So, in a way, even though he didn't directly say that Israel is your name,